Okay. Well, hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Yeah? Good? Okay. So I'm going to go around the room real quick and get your names. And if you have a particular question you're thinking about with grants or something you want to know or something you're thinking about wanting funding for, think about letting me know that. Ashley, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, short films.
Okay. Rhodes? It can be equipment, it can be travel, it can be food, it can be props, it can be, what's that, marketing? Okay. Hi. Yeah? Okay. You want to just know how to write grants, right? Okay. And Karen, we talked about storytellers and wanting to know how to make your case and impact. Okay. 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 Good. Charlotte, you have any? You want to know everything, Charlotte said.
Yes. I have no immediate need, but I'm going to be prepared.
Okay. And Collis?
I am obviously interested in films, narrative, shorts, etc. But actually, more recently, I'm interested in figuring out ways of getting grants for my clients.
And your clients are?
Dance companies, artists, musicians, nonprofits.
And what do you do?
Video production, film production.
So your clients you're making videos for them?
Yeah, so they
okay.
pay me, so I'd like them to pay me.
Got it. We can talk about that. Hi.
Hi, I'm Joy. I'm just curious about this, so I don't really have any questions right now.
Curious. Got it.
Chad, I also don't have any questions.
Okay.
Mark, I don't have any questions either.
Okay.
That may change.
You're gonna when I get done. Silas?
Silas, I just want to know how to get money for projects.
Okay. Any particular project, Silas?
Specifically feature films and possibly documentaries.
Oh, I know something about documentaries. Okay.
Andrew?
Yep.
Wanted to, for the same reason that Silas said, I actually do have a project I'm trying to get funded. So.
What is it?
It is we're framing it as a docudrama on sexual assault.
Okay. Hi.
What was the question?
What is your question?
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I guess for funding curious if it's funding for distribution.
Okay. And tell me your name again.
Greg.
Greg. You too. Adon?
Yes, I don't have any questions. Hi guys, I'm Adon. I'm here from Charlotte, ready to learn.
All right. Yasmin, what you got?
Hi.
Hi.
So my question involves distribution as well as streaming.
Okay. We'll touch a little bit on that. Hi.
Hi, I'm Destiny. My question is how to write grants for comedy films.
Write grants for what, honey?
Comedy.
Comedy. Okay. Do you have a topic that, is it?
I write usually the comedy, and I just feel like it's unserious, and it's hard to write something really emotional in a proposal.
Okay. All right. Hi.
I'm Tyler.
Hi, Tyler.
General interest for film funding and for nonprofit work.
Okay. And nonprofit work being that you produce videos?
So future plans to help with at-risk youth.
Okay. Great. Did I get everybody? Somebody moved. You moved. Okay. I was like, wait a minute. You were over there. I used to be a professor, so I'm like, get back over there. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Grants for hiring people, or just like having an intern with that, and then also for new venture.
New venture. Okay. So everything I'm going to share with you applies whether you're writing a grant for bathrooms, roofs, films, nature centers, whatever it is. All of these apply. All these rules kind of apply, and background will apply. These are kind of the strategies of how you find a grant and how you get a grant and what the different types of grants are. If you want me to do a follow-up to this, I'd be happy to come back after you guys have heard this and maybe have some pitches, and we can do some more brainstorming if that'd be helpful, because I think this will get your wheels turning. But hopefully it'll also help you think about the ways you can present information and who you can get information and funding from. So that's kind of the layout of the presentation. Ashley's going to put this whole slide deck on the TRIF website. I've started to add, with Ashley's help, a whole list of resources about funding sources, funding lists, funding tips, all kinds of things there. And we're going to keep growing that on our camera-ready film section of the website. So you'll be able to go there, including sample letters of commitment and all that kind of stuff that you're going to hear about today. So there'll be some good resources there for you. There we go. So there are different types of grants you can get for different purposes. Has anybody participated in a film lab before? Okay. Yeah, so it's similar, right. And so sometimes you can use this to springboard into a grant opportunity. So filming, for a stipend, sometimes for a residency, can get you in the door with some funders and give you a leg up. Ashley asked that I talk to you too about press releases. Do press releases on everything you do. So regardless if it's big or small, if you got a grant, you got a new job, a new client, whatever it is, keep pumping out your press, because funders look at that. You should have a pretty healthy list and profile of everybody you're working with and the things that you're working on. If you have any big giant gaps of time in that list, fill them in with some things. Might be that you're attending Film Bar, that you went to 3 festivals during that time, but really put up information about you so the funder can learn about you. They will go to your website and your Facebook page, so clean them up. Make sure they're accurate, make sure there's not a lot of crap on there, and make sure that you're very clear about what you're doing and what you want to have funded, okay? Because they do look heavily at that. But this is a really good place, tell me your name one more time. Destiny went to the film lab, and what it'll do is it'll open doors and give you yet another networking opportunity. So as many corporate events as well that you can go to, I highly suggest you do that. Glad handing in a suit is always a good thing. To start to learn who's out there and who might have the funding to take you forward. There are also fellowships that you can get. You've probably heard of Sundance in Tribeca, and in combination with Sloan Foundation, they provide different fellowships, mainly focused on science, but science is connected to everything we do. So you can kind of make that tangential leap. It might be a comedy about a scientific principle, right? It might be a docudrama about, some scientific invention. So there's lots of different ways you can connect to different funders using your film, but understanding what your film's about and making that thread and making that bridge for the funder. So you can think about that when you're looking at these types of sources as well. Film grants are usually the most unrestricted, and that's what I'm going to talk about mostly today. It gives you the most freedom. You don't have to pay it back. You don't have to be a resident. You don't owe them anything other than funder reports and measurements. So I'm going to share with you how you get those grants and then how you measure what you did in order to report back to them. And what you want to be really careful of with any grant is to tell a story clearly, but also to do what you say you are going to do. And Ashley and I have had these conversations. Ashley is now steeped in grant writing. We did a marathon session to write a state grant, and we were both cross-eyed by the end of it. But I think what you learn from doing that kind of thing is how clear you have to be, how you have to connect the dots all together, just like you do in a film. It's no different. And you have to know where you're going to end up, right? So you're telling a story. You have to know the ending before you start writing. So I'm going to share a few tips about that. So what a grant is not, I just want to be really clear, it's not a pot of gold. There is no pot of gold out there that is a grant. It's not a crisis intervention fund for, you need money now to pay your rent. This isn't your source. And it's not a long-term solution for your hopes and dreams and your aspirations. So what it can do, though, is it can really propel you forward. So it can address an identified need. So if you've got funding for your film and your camera is lagging behind in the latest technology, and you really need one in order to create something that you want to create, that's a need, right? Or if there is a library that's burned down and you're doing a video for the library about the need for services for underserved youth, that's a need, but it's giving you money for your video, okay? So start thinking about what the need is, because that's the most important thing in a grant. They don't care, quite honestly, that you are the best filmmaker in the world. What they want to know is that the need you need to addresses their need to how they're going to use their money. They're investing in you to propel their mission. So you've got to show them how those two things connect. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So it can be a catalyst, so it can give you seed money, it can get you started. It can also be the opposite end and be a capstone. So we're going to talk a little bit about in-kind and match funding tonight. And so that'll give you some thoughts about, hopefully, some thoughts about what you should be tracking, because you can count that when you're asking for funding from somebody else, okay? So it can be a tool, create a tool. It can also create partnerships. I strongly suggest you reach out to groups that are beyond your film network to work on things that you're interested in. So if it's comedy films, I'm going to keep coming back to Destiny's comedy films, or it's storytelling, reach out beyond those circles of filming and work with comedic actors or comedy troupes or colleges that are writing prose, just different groups. So unlikely allies can result in fantastic grant applications. So try to think beyond your film project and who you can connect with, almost like a spider, if you kind of envision that. Directly or indirectly impacting people through distribution, right? That's what a film, once it's distributed, who's it going to connect with? That's really important to a funder. Whether they're a film-based funder or a general funder, they want to know who this impacts and why. Okay, so who, why, and need. 3 big things that you want to be thinking about with your grants. Engage with your community as you go. We just talked a little bit about press. Be posting on social media, tagging other groups that are connected to your film topic. Start branching out. Really think about who you can bring into your circle to learn more about your film, but also who might fund it or fund the next one if they like what you've done. Okay, so really use your social media in that way to engage the community in what you're doing. And at the same time, it can fund new services or programs and educate the community. So these words that I'm using are important because these are words that grant writers and grant funders like to hear. They like to hear education, distribution, impact, those kind of words. It's got its own lexicon, just like filmmaking does, and so you need to learn those words and use them. And also learn how to read an application because it will give you clues. It's like a little treasure hunt, so we'll talk a little bit about that too. Is this making sense to everybody so far? Okay. So how do you get a grant? So there are filmmaker grants, and we've put lists on the TRIF website for you, but some of them, Filmmakers Without Borders, International Filmmaking, Southern Doc Fund. Is anybody familiar with the Southern Doc Fund? The Film Collaborative. None of those require a nonprofit partner. But you can have a fiscal sponsor that you can use primarily for a film. So here's an example. My husband's a documentary producer. He wanted to create a documentary about a man who created a science invention that was the flexible wing that turned into hang gliding, paragliding, all those kind of things. So he's an independent documentary producer. He needed a fiscal agent. So we went on the hunt for a fiscal sponsor, fiscal agent, and First Flight Society, who is interested in flight, ended up being our fiscal sponsor and our fiscal agent. So we're applying for grants under them. So it doesn't mean that you have to be the applicant for a grant. In fact, any of you that are working for nonprofits or with nonprofits or producing videos for them, they need to be the ones that are applying for the grant to take that weight off of you, because once you get the grant, you got to manage the grant and you got to report on the grant and you got to do everything you said you were going to do, like I said at the beginning. So if you can get somebody else to manage that grant for you, do that. So Silas, for instance, Try and Fine Arts Center, if they're your place, you could go to them and say, I'd really like to work with you on applying for a grant to produce more films in Tryon and use TFAC as a site for this. And so they get publicity, right? They get information about them put out there in all the press releases. They get their logo on your film. They get, materials that you're developing. They get that whole hubbub about them being current and, having a younger generation there. So that can work to their advantage. So don't be afraid to ask a group that is a for-profit or a nonprofit to write a grant with you to propel what you're doing, okay? So think about each one of those as an opportunity. And all these slides are gonna be available to you, so you'll have them. So most grants that are out there aren't film focused, and that's why I'm telling you these things. So here's a perfect example. I was an Arts Council director. Do you wanna ask a question?
Yes, you're saying write a grant with you, or you're saying there does not have to be a grant fund established already?
Yeah, I mean, they may have, so here's an example, and this kind of ties to it. So when I was an Arts Council director in Eastern North Carolina, I wanted funding to be able to support arts programming. So art and art exhibit, and that's one of the hardest things to get funded. So what I did is I went to a pharmaceutical company, GlaxoSmithKline, who has a program called Ribbon of Hope, and they want to focus on hunger. So I thought, okay, we could do an art exhibit on hunger. We can pay an artist to create the exhibit. We can make it a touring exhibit, and we can give half the money to a food bank to create a pantry for young children. And then the art exhibit would be about hunger, and it was 4 little kids, one with her hand on her tummy and glasses on, because that's the impact of hunger. She can't see, and she's hungry. And so we toured that all around the county, all different places. So they got $12,500, and artists and the Arts Council got $12,500. So if you think about it uniquely like that, there are tons of funders out there. So be thinking about that. Who could I connect with that could possibly write a grant with me, because you're the expert, so they're going to put you in the grant, but who could write that grant to get them funding to reach their mission as well as you to reach your goal. Does that make sense? So you can do that with storytelling too, right? So you could tell stories about trauma, right? And didn't somebody else have sexual assault, right? So boom, you could tell stories about sexual assault. You can work together on documenting that. You can create the film about that. And maybe somebody else here, Tia, might be able to write the grant for you. And each of you get a piece of the pie. So don't be afraid to widen your circle, and you're not competing with each other. This actually will create a real brainstorming that you'll see funding sources that you never saw before. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, okay. So where to find grant opportunities? Listen to the radio, look at streaming platforms, look at billboards, look at advertisements, look at a newspaper, look at flyers. Every single one of them has a funder on it, or they're talking about a funder, or they're mentioning a funder, right? And so once you Google that funder, don't stop at that funder. Scroll down a couple pages, because what's going to happen is light funders are going to pop up. So when you hear a film project that's been funded, let's say it's Sloan Foundation, you Google Sloan Foundation and they're all about science, et cetera, but keep going down your Google search, because on the second or third page, there'll be other ones that'll pop up that are also funding films or also doing something like that. So look at annual reports for corporations. Don't dismiss corporations. They have a lot of video work they want done. Most of them don't have video work in-house. So they're another source for you to get kind of some bloodline money while you're trying to do your passion projects. So think about them because they also have foundations. Almost every corporation has a foundation. Every bank has a foundation. Most large entities like Walmart has a foundation. Target has a foundation. I mean, all of them do. So look at what they're interested in doing and see if it's a match. And you might even want to think about at every film bar meeting, kind of bringing your sources together and mapping them out so that you all can look at where they are and you could go after them even as a group. So, think about strategically working on that kind of thing.
So we've thought about grants and stuff like that, but the film bar has to be incorporated in some way, right?
It has to be a nonprofit 501c3. Yeah.
Or LLC or something.
Well, LLC is different. LLC is for profit. So a nonprofit is called a 501c3 is what it is, which means you can bring income in, but it's income to pay your expenses. So you're not making a profit, so to speak. So, but you could go up under Chapman Cultural Center. You could go up under TRIF possibly, PCFI, different groups like that, maybe Upstate SC, through the Urban League might be able to do something like that. So running a 501c3 is a lot of work. So really think hard about doing that because it will kill your passion really quick. So.
I can say, in Spartan, I don't know if y'all know about like Spartan County Foundation, but they have a group of people that get together called Nonprofit Connect.
Okay.
And we will have most every nonprofit.
There you go.
County.
Yes.
And they're looking for
Yes.
people to tell their stories.
Yes.
I know, because I run, and I'm looking for somebody that wants to tell our story.
There you go. Exactly. Yep.
So they're,
Government, local, state, national, they usually put out calls for some of these things. There's some websites that you can sign up to receive the notifications if there's work coming out. So think about looking at those. Tourism entities as well are good places to look for funding. One Spartanburg, for instance, but don't just go local. Go regional, go national. Think about what topics you're focused on and don't limit yourself to just what's right around you. And private trusts, you have to know somebody who knows somebody, but if you put in private trusts or endowments in Spartanburg County, a bunch will come up. You'll have to do some searching, but you'll find people there. Okay. Websites, of course, Networks for Filmmakers, the TRIF website, which I've talked about. The Google searching, when you do that, don't just search by funder, search by what will change. So, Andrew, your film that you're envisioning is sexual assault. Why are you doing that?
So the producer was a survivor herself. We've already collected all the interviews. We're just going to be telling the stories through acting.
Okay.
In 3 separate phases. So trauma, survival, healing.
And what is the story you're hoping to?
Just the stories of these individuals, and then we have counselors who want to be part of this as well. So having experts kind of talk about like, this is what's going on, this is why they're
The behavior?
behavior, yeah. Behavior.
And so what's gonna change? Why does this matter?
Information or being like.
For who?
So we're seeing this as people are not alone. Others have experienced similar traumas. They are not alone. There's help out there for them. That's the information.
Do we need to take cover? You think? You all are like going, I think we're okay, but maybe not. The bathroom is right down there. We can all fit. Go ahead. So I'm just going to push you a little bit more. Why are you doing this? Not about you.
No.
Why are you telling this story? What are you hoping will change? Will there be new?
The behavior of the individuals that cause these kind of things will change.
So you're expecting such people who commit sexual assault to watch it?
Not necessarily, but they might be connected to others who have seen this kind of thing, or
Okay.
know a family member, or
So you're raising awareness,
raising awareness.
you're raising informational awareness, and you're hoping to change behavior. So when you're searching for a grant, you're not searching for a grant, I want to make a film. You're searching for a grant that will change behavior for sexual assault, right? So are you getting wet? Okay. Okay. So when you're searching for funding sources, think about that. What is it you want to change? What are you making a difference? How are you making a difference, right? Are you telling somebody something they don't know? Are you bringing more people to the table? Are you going to change the way they live? Are you going to change how they act with their child, right? Why does it matter? And that's one of the most important things with a grant. Why does it matter? Read annual reports. They're really boring, but they have funders in them. So make sure you look at them and kind of peruse through them, and you will see funding lists in there. Even for Sundance or anything like that, any film festival, look who's funding them. Clearly, those are people who are already interested in films, right? And in filmmaking. So that's your low-hanging fruit. So make sure you're looking at annual reports and websites also for your industry. Any questions on that? Yeah, Yasmin.
Yes. So you were asking, and you were like, what do you expect to change after you do this project?
Mm-hmm.
But how do you tell the story of like why us and why now?
Well, data. So everything you need to present should be backed up by data if you have something like that. So it could be that the rate of sexual assault has increased by 30% in the nation, and in Spartanburg County it's gone up by 50%, so something clearly is missing here. So you've got to make your case with data. So that's kind of the short answer for that. Does that make sense? Okay. So there are different types of grant applications. There's letter of interest or inquiry. There's a request for proposal. There's also defined grant cycles for full proposals or rolling grant cycles for full proposals. So the language of these matter, but the work is the same. So even though it's 1 page, maybe 2 page letter of interest or inquiry, you have to know where your movie's going to end, right? You have to know where your grant's going to end. So you have to pretty much plan it all out to be able to summarize it down like a treatment, right? You have to be able to summarize it down to a boilerplate of 1 page. And I'm going to give you information about what to put in your toolkit to get ready for when that grant opportunity comes. And all of you should go home if you're interested in grant writing, and over the next couple of weeks, try to pull together your own toolkit in a shared drive or a Google Drive so you're ready. So when you're talking to other people and you're saying, I want to go after a grant, you have your toolkit ready, and they're going to ask you for these things. So you're going to be able to produce them or just give them a link to your shared drive. Okay, so these are things that you're going to need to pull together. This is an example of a very, very simple letter of inquiry. But in order to get to those little sentences down there, you have to have written 4 or 5 pages about what you're going to do. So sketch it all out and then be able to summarize it, okay? Don't start with an outline. What I do is I just sketch, just brainstorm, storyboard it, mood board it, whatever board you want to use, and then bring it back to a summary. Yeah. Yes. So, but what you're going to do with your toolkit is you're pulling together kind of your documents, information about you, information about your company, information about, how you bill, your resume, all those kind of things. But yes, you have to have a concept and then you tailor it to whatever the funder is asking. Another key point is always answer the question. Don't tell them what you want to know. Tell them what they want to know. And a lot of people trip up on those and don't get grants because they're just going on and on and on in a blue streak, and they're not answering the question. So this week I helped a woman review her grant for nature art programming. A page and a half she wrote, never answered the question. So you've got to go back and make sure you're answering the question, underline it, reread it, write it down. If you're a visual learner, write it down. It will really help lock it in your brain, and I'll give you some tips about that. So this is like a puzzle, really, and it's almost like a puzzle in a research paper put together. So if you like doing book reports when you were growing up, you're going to love writing grants. If you didn't, this might be a challenge. So you haven't got to write all this stuff down. I'm not going to go over all this stuff, but it's on the slide deck that'll be on the TRIF website. So these are the things from the film industry and the grant industry that they want to see in your toolkit. So when you go to the nonprofit, call us and you go there and you say, I'm ready to write a grant, you can tell them you've got a shared drive with all this information in it. Okay? What did I do? Nothing. There we go. You might want to also put in the toolkit, and this is from film industry research that I did, proof of ownership of the content. You know, who has the rights to it? So you might want to have a document about that. Any incorporation documents you have for your own business to show you're legitimate. Proof of ownership, that's duplicated. Rights information. Who's the lead on the film? Sometimes they require that the director or producer be part of a grant application or a pitch. Some require you have at least one previous professional credit to your name, and some require demonstration of quality and suitability for theatrical release. So those are some tips from the film industry. And I'm not a film grant writer. I'm learning it from my husband, but the principles are the same. So these are some criteria that the film industry is saying if you're going to make a pitch about a film, they want this stuff shown. So this is part of your toolkit too, I think, as a film industry professional. How many have you all written treatments before? Do you have good examples of treatments, or do you want me to put some of those on the website? That's a yes, no, and silence. Yes, you want, okay, so treatments, okay. Everybody's like going, like, okay, that's good. All right, so we'll put letters of commitment and treatments on there. A shooting script, artistic statement, production plan, your fundraising strategy, film business financial plan, an audience engagement plan, and production credits. Those are some of the things that the film industry is saying they want to see in your packet. So again, these are things to put in your toolkit. Some of these things aren't hard. You probably already have an artistic statement. If you don't, you should have one, because this is your elevator speech when you go glad handing with suits to ask them for funding or go to a nonprofit. These things should be rolling off the tip of your tongue. All these things of what's your fundraising plan, 5 bullets about how you're going to raise money for this thing. Who are you? What's your artistic statement? Where did you come from? Why should I trust you? Why should I even care about you, right? So put these things together and articulate them, because it will make it easier for you to make those pitches. Yeah.
So like the fundraising strategy, sometimes it seems like whatever strategy you have sounds like it's too non-concrete. Like if your strategy is to apply for grants, or your strategy is to do a crowdfunding campaign,
Right.
there's no way to do that.
That's true. There isn't, but it shows that you've got a diverse set of funding streams that you're looking at. So that helps. It would help to put numbers with those, and realistic numbers. So you're hoping to apply for a $2,500 grant, right? So if you're starting out in the grant world, it's almost like building a house and a foundation. So start out with small. Well, foundation should be the opposite, but the grants that you're going to start with are small, but you can build up to those. So here's a perfect example. North Carolina Humanities Council. They are interested in culture and history and documenting that through a variety of ways. They have $2,000 planning grants, $5,000 research grants, $20,000 large project grants. They don't give you $20,000 to start with. So if you say you're applying for a $2,000 grant, that's realistic, right? And where the source is, and that's where your searching comes from. And then how much you're going to get from GoFundMe. Be realistic. Don't throw it out of the water, because they're going to say you don't have a chance to do that, right? Also track how much you're putting into it, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and that has a lot of value. So there you've got 3 different funding sources, right, that you're working on. So that's kind of the best way to kind of start that way, yeah.
How important is it to diversify the different grants you're getting? Like, should you get grants from multiple sources, or should you kind of try to build a relationship with a certain?
It depends. So some funders require you have a match. They require and it's not in kind. It might need to be cash. So in that case, you need to go to another funding source. So some require that. Some don't, though. Some won't require that you have a match or in kind. So it may be that you get most of your money from one grant and you're able from another grant to get a smaller amount. Every funder doesn't want to be the only person in the pot. They love to be the capstone. They love to be the ones that finalized it, or seeded it. They like to be the opposite end. So here's another good example. So I'm working with my husband on this Regala documentary. We got money for a trailer. So he got a $12,000 grant for a trailer. And so that's under production. So now we're going for the other grants, and I'm finding very limited resources. I went to Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They said, well, it's not really a fit for this. They wanted some other kind of programming. So, okay, that was going to be a $50,000 piece in the $140,000 puzzle that is now gone. So my response to him was, okay, I think I can raise maybe another $30,000 from another grantor that was interested. What happens if I can't get the rest? Can you do 30 minutes versus 60? So sometimes you have to flex, and you might not always get exactly what you want, but you can still have a strong product. So it depends. Each funder works a little bit differently, but all of them don't want to be the only one in the pot. Very, very, very few. Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to go through professional credits. You all know that, and I don't want to take up all this. I want to hear your questions. But what I really want you to make sure you do is scope it out before you write, okay? Read that website and that application over and over and over again. Print it out, even though if you aren't a printer, print it out, highlight it, write your questions next to it, save it on your computer as well, really sit on it, let it steep, really think about it, and read the questions and answer the questions. And that's where you can start an outline under each question about what you want to say. And then go back the next day and look at it and go, did that really answer the question, or am I just saying what I want to say? It'll take practice, but if you do that, you'll get better and better at really honing in on what the funder wants from you. So read their newsletters and information about past grantees. Really look at what they've funded before. Even reach out to past funded groups and say, how did you get it? Do you have any tips for me? And if it's a good fit, you never know, they might be willing to work with you on a grant because they're a past funded entity. So use what you find on the websites, in short, to really build up your knowledge about the funder. Okay? So determine a fit, check on the timing, check on the money. Are they going to be able to give enough money that it's going to be worth it? Are they going to give the money in a timely fashion that's going to fit with your project? You can't ask for money at a different time than what they are giving you. So if they say you won't get the funds till November and it's July when you apply, you're not going to get the funds till November. So don't ask for it for October, because that'll show you didn't read the application, okay? And they get lots and lots of applications, so they're looking for ways to weed people out. So if your packet isn't complete, or your dates are off, that can bump you right out immediately. So they got to figure out a way to call people, and that's one way that they figure it out. So check the amounts, see if there's a match needed, see if the timing works for you. Write down all the due dates. Yep. And if it feels like a square peg in a round hole, it is, and don't apply. Because it's a waste of your time, it's a waste of the funder's time. Make sure that there is a good fit there. Yeah, it's critical. Yeah. So make sure you're eligible, make sure it's feasible, make sure that you understand it. And if there's somebody to call to talk to them about it, call them. But make sure you have your pitch ready. Because I've called before to large foundations, I'm talking Gates Foundation and Duke Foundations and all those kind of things, and gotten on the phone with an administrative assistant to set up a meeting, and she will pass the phone call over to the officer, and boom, you're in. So you've got to be ready. So don't pick up that phone until you're ready, until you know the amount you're going to be asking for, what you're going to be asking for in terms of pitch, and then also how it connects to their mission, okay? Because they will pass you off in a heartbeat and your heart will stop.
So do you recommend calling a grant before you submit and just kind of...
Sure, yes. Relationships are very important. I call every funder I can. I email back and forth with them, nicely. Say, I'm just trying to understand this. Could you help me learn a little bit more about what you're looking for here? Or I don't quite understand what the dates are. There's a foundation in Asheville that their website is absolutely mind-boggling, that they say they have meetings in April and December, but the grants are due in October, and that's all they say. And you're like, so am I supposed to send it in April for the October one, and is December too late for the, so I finally emailed the woman and said, the contact, and said, can you help me understand? And she was a little snarky, but I didn't tell her website was horrible. I just said, thank you. But yes, call, talk to them, but be ready. Be ready when you're about to do that. Prepare a working outline. That makes sense, I hope, to everybody. Save it frequently. One of the first grants I wrote from the best grant writer I ever worked with, I had 17 versions of the grant, whether it was a comma that I added or a paragraph I changed around. And when I left employment with her 9 years later, I wrote one version of a grant. So if you do that, you really build your skills. It's like script writing. You really build your skills, and you really track where your pitfalls are, and grow your skill set that way. Letters of support. Make sure when you're reading your grant application and criteria, if there's letters of support or commitment needed, you start there. Get your paragraph together about what it is, because people travel, they have lives, they have emergencies, you have a deadline. So start with the letters of commitment and support immediately. As soon as you have your one-pager on what you're going to do, and I can put some samples of letters of support and commitment up on the TRIF website so you can see those. What I tend to do is I'll draft the letter, and I'll put places in there where I want them to fill it in or personalize it. And so people can do that and put it on their own letterhead. A lot of funders don't like them to be exactly the same, so I change them up for different groups, but I send them to them and give them a due date and give them at least 2 weeks to turn it around. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah.
Do you want to give examples of who you would get those from?
The letters of support, it depends on what you're doing. So let's go back to Andrew's film. I would get it from an advocacy group. I'd get it from professional counselors. I'd get it from maybe a human services entity, might be a local government human services entity. And make sure that if you have to have a notarized signature, that you don't sign the paper before you go to the bank that you bank at for a notarized signature. And some applications require a notarized signature. So if you need that, even do that early on in the process, because I've gone into banks and they're out for lunch or they're on vacation and they're the only notary in the bank. And it does happen. So don't wait till the last minute on that stuff. Okay, so tips on budget. How much time do I have? Am I way over? Probably.
Technically here for 2 hours. You can do whatever you want.
Okay, all right. Well, I won't keep you for 2 hours. I haven't even eaten dinner. I'm not going to keep you for 2 hours. What's that?
You're at 42 now.
Okay. So read the guidelines to make sure your costs are eligible for grant funding. Not all will fund certain things. So some won't fund administration. Some won't fund food. Some won't fund travel. Okay, so read it really carefully. Don't put a budget item in there that they're not going to fund because they're going to kick the whole thing out. And make sure that your project dates align with the funding period that your application is for. So I never complete a grant application in the portal because you could hit submit by accident and off it goes and there's nothing you can do. So what I do is I copy it and then drop it into a Word document and work on it offline. And then when I'm ready, I dump it in there. There will be character limits almost on every single grant application. And there will or be word limits, and character limits meaning a comma, a space is a character, as is every single letter, which are really hard grants to write. But most do word counts, so pay attention to that too as you go. So this is in the slide deck, a sample budget narrative where you're talking about what you're asking them to be funded, the number of hours, the hourly rate, what they're going to be doing. And then in the first column, that's the funder you're asking the money for. So in this case, you're asking the funder for $20,975, and your cost share or match or in kind is that second column, and then the total budget is your third column. So if you have multiple sources, you should have multiple columns in your budget for every source that you're asking for funding for. So here's some good, better, best kind of things. So on a budget narrative, a poor budget narrative says $20,000 for supplies. You can see the better one gets a little bit better, and the third one is detailed. So they want to know.
Do you want to have full transparency with everything, or like if you have other funders and stuff like that, they get to see each other's information and stuff like that? Or is there anything you want to hold back?
No, you want to be completely transparent, completely honest, don't fudge any numbers, and tell everybody what everybody else is doing. That's fine. They want to see collaboration and partnership on that. But in your budget narrative, this is just about what that funder is being asked to fund. So you're not putting everything in for the whole project. So if your cost share is about the food and stuff, you're going to say that in your narrative, that you're matching it with funding for food, or you've gotten donations for food, and that they're partially covering these other things. Yeah.
What about like contingency line items or miscellaneous line items? Those be left out?
There's no great way to say miscellaneous or contingency without someone going, you don't know what you're doing. So you want to put line item everything. Yeah. And build it so you have a contingency in there. So when I go, and you probably do this too, when you do a quote for any of the work that you do, you add a few hours knowing, especially if they're high maintenance clients, you know you're going to need more probably than what they're asking. So this is the in-kind match cost share column. You can count cash, keep track of your in-kind. So if you spend $10 on gas to go to Film Bar to come to this session, that's an in-kind, right? Your time has value as well. Your volunteer labor that other people are giving you, or if they're giving you a discounted rate. So if someone is willing to be in your film and they normally charge X, but they're charging you Y, that difference is volunteer labor, and it can be counted toward a grant match or in-kind share. Same with discounted costs for production or space. So if you're getting free space, discounted space, count that difference, and that counts towards your match. So that's one of your columns for your cost share. Okay. Create a timeline that makes sense. Some funders ask you for a timeline. You include the funding reports that they ask for you in the timeline. So if the first thing is that you get your grant set up, that's fine. You get it set up internally. If you have an advisory committee or a council, or you're gonna do an outreach to get people to give you input on the concept, that counts as well. Any kind of meetings you're gonna have, any film steps along the way that you're gonna do, and of course the funder reports. So you can use charts like this to say a lot in a small space, especially when your space is limited. Okay? So read the questions, answer the questions, and avoid sharing only what you want to share. And I've said that a few times. Treatments, you all know what goes into treatments, but these are from film industry criteria. So take a look at those when you pull it down off the TRIF website. These are good ways to be thinking about any of your pitches. Here's some information about distribution and outreach. A lot of film pitches, they want to know who your audience is specifically, not just 500 people from Polk County. They want to know who it is you're trying to target. Andrew, we talked a little about who do you want to watch it, right? How do you plan to reach it? How are you going to distribute it? What outreach activities are you going to use? And Ashley mentioned press releases to me. And how will you engage and interact with your audience? Will there be any kind of feedback loop? Will there be any kind of participation? Will there be any kind of assessment to give you information on what they thought about your film or the trailer or anything like that? The more ways you can engage the audience you're trying to reach, the better your grant proposal will be. So if you're going to do storytelling on a particular topic, run the concept by the audience you're trying to reach and include that in your grant proposal, because then they're going to see you're not talking to them, you're talking with them. And that's what funders want to see. They want to see that connection. So evaluating and measuring and assessing. So there's what they call outputs and outcomes. And let me just go over this quickly with you. So outcomes are change, decrease, increase, any change in behavior. They want to see what the results are from their funding. So in terms of decreasing hunger, disease, sexual assault, whatever it is, and some things, don't be too lofty. Don't say things you can't do within that time frame. Be realistic. You can say influence or increase awareness of versus increase behavior, because behavior takes a long time and a lot of money. So again, poor, better, best. The film will change people's lives, and then you can see at the bottom how much more detailed it is. It's going to support advocacy and public education about the need for access to library services. So you can see the difference. Outputs is a number. So number of films you're going to make. So it's quantitative. So create your attachments early. We talked about this. Make sure that you're looking at the end of the grant, which has optional attachments, and attach information about you, your CV, other links to what you've done before, maybe on YouTube or other formats that you've used. Your resumes, CVs, attachments like your film, I would say, brochures, any marketing materials, any press releases you've done. So save all those, keep those in your toolkit, and you'll be able to upload those when you get to that point.
Can I also add really fast?
Yeah?
Can you talk a little bit about all the different attachments they might ask for? Because that last one we did, it was for audio files.
Yes. Right. Different art funders will ask for show reels or testimonials, mood boards, storyboards. Yeah, they can ask for all kinds of things. They can be optional, but the more you can give them, the more they know that you've really thought this through. So that's what they're looking for. They're looking for ways to make you stand out from other grantees. So yeah, pictures are a good thing. Yeah. But arts groups definitely like the video and audio reels. So write it, spell check it, let it simmer, read it out loud. That's a great way to proof your grant application or anything. Reading it out loud, you'll catch your errors immediately. It's a great trick. Invite somebody else to read it, somebody who isn't close to the project, and review it against the criteria. Let's see, how funny. Okay, so these are different points about how grant decisions are made. And this is some review criteria from film industry sites. This is what they're looking for in terms of how they're going to look at your grant application. So look at those. It's kind of a work backwards, teach to the test. Here's some more. It's a lot. And submit early. Definitely submit early. I'll stop there. What questions you have? Oh.
Does it help to mention previous grants you've gotten?
Yes. Sometimes there's an opportunity to do that. Sometimes there isn't, but you could do an attachment with a list of grants that you've received before.
Just let them know you're willing to comply.
Right. Yeah, it is. No, I think that's a really good point. Definitely. Yep.
And then do the funders have requirements upon themselves to fulfill that we should be aware of, not just the stuff we've turned into them, but
You mean what they have to do for their boards?
yes, like, do they have any
The entity themselves, do they have someone?
requirements?
Who's the entity? The funder?
Yeah.
Well, they have a board usually. And so the officer is responsible for picking the right grantees. And if they pick the wrong one, that doesn't look good. So they want to make sure, that's one of the reasons they make you jump through all these hoops. And so they report usually to their boss, and their boss reports to their board. Yeah. So yes, they do. Yeah.
So knowing that chain is helpful.
Yes, it is. Yes. Yes. It goes all the way up the chain. Yep. And back down again. Yep. Any other questions? So how I would put that together is it's the time that you're doing the production, right? So that's where I would tuck it under. I wouldn't call it salary or living expenses. I would call it production. Yeah.
I know sometimes they call that like development funding.
Right. Yeah. Pre-planning, development. Mm-hmm.
Because I'd assume, like, in a lot of situations, you would need to pay for certain staff to help, like, get the film made. But
Mm-hmm.
that's my question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Filmmaking is really hard with grants. I mean, I've done a lot of digging for my husband looking for documentary funding. And the best way to do it is to think about groups that are interested in your topic. Like I talked about First Flight Society, right? They're interested in flight. So we were able to get support from them because they were interested in flight. So I would think about it from a topic as a filmmaker versus the production of a film in general. Because there's just not a lot of money out there that Ken Burns hasn't sucked up somehow. I mean, or Corey, Rory Kennedy, or you know what I mean? People who have money. So you've got to think about it a little differently and think about it more from the grassroots of who you're going to impact and what topic you're going to talk about. And then a whole world opens up to you about funders and different funders.
So this seems like a full-time job.
What, grant writing? Yeah. I'm trying not to make it full-time.
Can you talk about what it's like working with a grant writer?
What it's like working with a grant writer? Sure. So here's what I do. Not all grant writers do it the same, but and I'm not pitching for work right now. I am slammed, let me just say. But I'm happy to help y'all. But what I do is I give a scope of work, so I know how much time it's going to take me to write a trust grant or a state grant or a federal grant, and they're tiered in the amount of time and money, or a little private foundation grant. So for me, what I charge is what nonprofits can pay. So I charge $500 to write a small grant, and then I charge $3,500 to write a federal grant. So what I do is work with a person or an entity, and I tell them, how much money do you want to raise? What do you want to raise it for? When do you need the money? What are you going to do with it when you get it? What do you need it? Exactly what do you need it for? And then we come up with a toolkit, like what I shared with you all. So I guide them on that. They do that on their own. And when they're ready to do that, then I work with them so that they're ready to go. So I try to build the capacity of the entities that I'm working with. And that's why I call it Grants for Good, is because I don't want people to always need me. I want them to learn how to write grants. So not all grant writers do that. Some grant writers like to keep it all to themselves and they won't share anything. And that's not the kind of grant writer you want to work with. You really want to work with somebody who you're going to learn from.
So in the case that I'm working with, submitting doesn't matter.
Should you be splitting?
Should I be submitting on their behalf, or does it really matter?
So if you're not a nonprofit, they need to be the one that submits it.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can write it for them, or you can work with them to write it. That's what I would suggest. And what I would suggest with all those different people you're working together, is there any synergy there between them all? Like, is there somebody who wants to create art about chocolate and somebody who wants to sing a song about chocolate and somebody, you know what I mean? And then you go to Hershey's for the chocolate, you know?
Not yet, but there could be at some point.
But, when you get hungry, you start thinking, who can I partner with? And it may behoove them and you to bring everybody together and say, where's our synergy? And that's why I say as a group, you guys might want to start brainstorming about where's our synergy here, right? You all are kind of looking for the same thing, but for different topics.
Well, I guess the synergy that's most evident for code and choreograph, have to do it, and then have the part.
There you go. Exactly. And bring them together, and you're stronger together. Several of you should come together and work on, you probably already do, and work on projects together to get them funded. Everybody has their strengths, but definitely look at unlikely allies. Like I said, get outside your circle and look for people that are interested in the topic you're doing your film about.